to the Creating Wealth and Wellness podcast with me, Tara Missildine, and my co-host, Amanda Kingsley. Today, we are going to take you on a journey where freedom is cultivated through personal development, where women connect to fuel their futures, and where wealth is created as a byproduct of being well. And we're super excited to talk about mentors today, and some really interesting concepts that Amanda brought to the table that I'd love to unpack. But before we do that, what we're going to do is talk about our gratitudes for today. Do you know what yours are, Amanda?
I have some good ones. I'm like, which one should I choose? I have been binge listening to Abraham on YouTube. I cannot get enough right now. Like, I fall asleep to it every night. Any second I can get, I'm like pressing play on an Abraham video. Only thing about them, so Abraham and Esther Hicks, if no one, we'll post a link to the YouTube channel. And I won't get into the magic of all that, except to say that there's some things I can listen to and multitask, and Abraham is not one of them. Like, I just got to stop and listen. So it is mostly before I go to bed, but totally binging on Abraham.
Fascinating. So that, believe it or not, I've never listened to any of it. And so many people have recommended it to me. And for some reason, I've just never plugged in.
I like stopped breathing for like.
I know. I saw your face. Okay.
All right.
Well, my gratitude is that I have my voice back and I am starting to feel human again. I've had the worst round of sickness pretty much of my entire life, and in the last couple of days. And so apologies in advance that I probably will have a couple of like hacking fits and whatnot. But I finally am starting to feel like it's definitely on the mend. So yay for reclaiming a little bit of health. That's my gratitude.
I say think of it as a cleansing. You just got rid of all kinds of junk that you don't need, and you can start fresh.
That's a good metaphor for many things right now. Okay, so we're going to talk about mentors today, and not just like finding a mentor, but more like developing a relationship with a mentor. So do you want to explain more of the concept that we're going to dive into today?
Yeah, for me, it was just like, particularly when we're new or in some kind of transition in the self-discovery / personal development / like growth world, we do a lot of, like, I think I called it guru hopping.
Yeah, guru hopping, which I like.
So we're like, we get so obsessed and excited about so many different people, so many different books, so many different podcasts and blogs, that we end up just like sort of spiraling in the excitement of it all versus committing to one or two people and diving as deep as we can into what they have to offer, what they have to share. And not getting distracted by the next shiny object. So for me, like, Brooke was definitely one of those people. If, like, she's sort of like my default. If I really need to figure it out, turn to Brooke. If I'm curious about what other people have to say, not in times of need to figure it out, then I'll check out other people. But I think it's really important to have just one or two like core people who you always turn back to. Abraham has always been that for me, even though I said I was in a binge right now. Abraham was always the videos that I would turn back to when I really felt like I gotta just get my head in the game of one person's train of thought.
Mm-hmm. So I would love it if you could actually open this up a little bit more. What is it that made you choose Brooke in that way? And then can you walk us through how that relationship has evolved and developed, that relationship? Because you've chosen her as one of your core mentors, right? What was it that made you make that choice? And then how have you evolved in your relationship with her, and how you utilized her teachings?
I think like for me, when I first started listening to her work, I didn't fully understand it, but I knew that everything I believed about life, she was somehow like calculating and quantifying and systemizing. And it was like, I still don't get all of what she's talking about, but for me, like every cell in my body was just like, this is what you've thought all your life. And now someone's explaining it to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's sort of like she shares some of your own innate wisdom, but already has it all kind of verbalized and mapped out.
Yeah, she's like explaining to me how I've been thinking my whole life.
Yes, yep. Totally.
Yeah. So there is a fair amount of looking and looking and looking and experimenting and being curious. But when you find that person who does that to you, when you find that person who you're just like, I can't seem to get enough because everything she says clicks for me. And even when it doesn't, if I keep listening, I'm like, oh, there's the click.
Yeah.
So I feel like I got lucky to find that in her because she is so easily, like mentorship from her is so available.
Accessible, yeah.
Yeah, and accessible. And I actually can. So I found her, I listened to her podcast for about 6 months straight up, like everything I could get from it.
Mm-hmm.
Then I joined her group coaching program called Self-Coaching Scholar. So that was me taking like the next step. Right. And I remember thinking, so when you find your person and you're like, there's so much value here, how could I even get anything more out of, like, there can't be more layers. And then I joined the Self-Coaching Scholars and my mind like exploded. I was like, holy moly, there's so many more layers to understand and to dive into here. So it was like I took it to the next level. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just about to start like the next level of commitment with her. But she actually is one of the people, there's no way I'm going to remember what podcast episode it was, but she's one of the people who introduced me to this concept of like choosing a few key people and just learning all you can.
Yeah.
Because we waste so much time and energy like looking for the greener grass versus just like caring and nurturing and understanding how our grass grows or how this one person is telling us to interpret life.
Well, you've heard everyone who has wisdom to share talks about how their program or their information is only as good as how you implement it, right?
Yeah.
So that's the problem with that guru hopping, like you were talking about. The problem that I see the most is that, you never get to the stage of going below the surface layer and actually implementing anything or changing anything or integrating something on those deeper levels. And it's totally, excuse me, it's totally like a procrastinatory thing to say, oh, I love this information. This has the potential to be totally transformational, but now I'm going to go learn something else rather than make that transformation.
It's also like a hopeful thing. It's like you hope that if you listen to something and it blows your mind, it's going to be the easy button that transforms everything. Like I know you've actually been life coaching longer than I have. So I'm sure you've seen it over and over again where people will take a workshop from you and they're like, oh my gosh, I learned everything I need to know about elements. You changed my life. This is the most amazing thing ever. And then 2 weeks later, they're flailing again because they came to one workshop.
And I mean, I've been doing this work for 8 years and I'm still a hot mess.
Yeah, right.
Still a hot mess.
Unless
they make so much to learn,
like that commitment to diving in with you and figuring out how exactly it integrates into their life, they're really just scratching the surface. And we waste so much time and energy scratching the surface in lots of different places instead of just going deep where we need to. And like in the case of life coaching, it usually is like hiring someone or joining some kind of program. But if you take like the Bible, right? Like if you wake up every morning, and I'm not religious, but if you wake up every morning and read the Bible, like you're going deeper and deeper and deeper. It's a commitment to one thing. So I use the life coaching example as like, don't take one challenge or listen to one podcast and be like, I learned everything I need to know from this person. Like the magic is under the layers, and you got to go deep to find it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really fascinating. So it's kind of making me think, I listened to a podcast the other day with a really well-known and reputable doctor. His name's Dr. Axe. And he was talking about how, like, a similar concept, but diet hopping. So like
yes.
when you're going to these sort of like extreme nutritional plans, that actually any of them can be very, very beneficial to certain bodies for small amounts of time. Like, and even any of these things that you look at is like, oh, these are probably not super balanced or like, healthful ways of living long term. But anytime that you're allowing an entire system of the body to rest, like he was talking about like doing the keto diet where it's very high fat and moderate protein and extremely low carb, you're letting entire systems of your body rest and recuperate because you're not pumping out insulin and you're not doing all, so I feel like the same concept of like finding deep and sustainable physical nutrition is the same for spiritual nutrition.
Absolutely.
So, like if you're just hopping back and forth to all of these different nutritional plans, you're not actually nourishing your body at all. You're confusing it, you're overwhelming it. You're not getting the value of what you could be getting by just going one or two levels deeper at the minimum. So it feels just like that to me, like that same kind of pattern of like quick fix, exploratory but non-committal, and we need so much more than that.
There's like another layer too, which I find really interesting, which is so when you're kind of walking through blind, sometimes there's way less stress than when you start opening your eyes, right? So like your actual state of being and health in some ways can be healthier when you're blind than when you start to see. You start to open up. And so I think too what happens is like when you start to see and open up and then you start following a million people, like the stress on your own body, spirit, mind, emotion of trying to soak it all in and trying to get what you can and eat it all up and not really living it, but just learning it. It's strangely unhealthy in a way compared to that state of blindness. Because now you know what you want, but you're not following through on it. And so it's just creating all this like discord. So it's almost like, yes, there's this point where you have to figure out where to go deep, but then you have to commit to it to actually get to the healthy place.
Yeah.
It's like, if I don't eat carbs one day and then I don't eat hours the next day, and then I don't eat any fat the next day, and it's like super stressful, right?
Yeah, totally. Very stressful and very inconsistent. And like your body doesn't know how to respond. So it's going to lash out. And the same with our emotional landscape, I think.
Like, and your spiritual landscape. Like you can just really confuse and overwhelm yourself.
Yeah.
If you go too wide and too thin.
Yep.
And then you have this like insatiable desire to learn it all. And that sounds healthy.
Because all you're eating is the sugar. You're just getting like, you're just
you're just getting that. Exactly. You're getting the hit. Yeah. You're getting like a quick hit.
Of
and
that
you're like,
new and easy thing. Yep.
And I want to learn all that. And I want to learn all that. And how will I ever choose?
You have an exclusive diet of like peanut butter cups and ice cream sandwiches.
Yeah. And you really have to just pick and go, I'm going to learn everything I can from this person. And when it stops feeding me, which will take years if you're really digging into someone's expert advice.
Well, because it also leads to like where do they source their information? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you can find someone who becomes a gateway for you, but you're not really going after them. You're going after their knowledge, their, the
Yeah.
source of what is powerful through them,
Brooke
right?
and Abraham are a good example of that because much of her teachings come from Abraham. So she
Oh,
has
okay.
like
So yeah.
some core people who she follows, like Abraham. She learned a lot from Tony Robbins. She learned a lot from, oh my God. Anyway, they're not all coming to me right now. But yeah, that's so true. Like you do start to, part of the digging deep and going into the layers is understanding where that person who introduced it to you is sourcing their information.
Right. Right.
And I'm like I feel like at the beginning for me, when I started digging into spirituality and understanding my own mind and what I wanted in life and all that goodness, I didn't actually want the big heavy hitters. Like I didn't want to dive into the like big people. Like I wanted little tastes from people who were just learning it like me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, well,
Like,
it's some kind of effect. I can't remember the name of it, but to learn from someone who is much more accessible and closer to you, it's sort of like why little toddlers cleave to like, kindergartners, and why kindergartners
yes,
cleave to third graders. Like, they want somebody who was just where they are, so they very
yeah,
clearly remember how they got from where I am to where they are now. Not
yes,
somebody who's like decades ahead of me and doesn't even remember
yes.
what it's like to be me.
So when I first started, that there was even like all this world existed, like Tony Robbins, Brooke Castillo, even like Brene Brown and Glennon Doyle, like they all were just so intimidating to me.
Yeah.
Like it was like they were speaking a different language, and I was never going to understand it.
Yeah.
And so I would even criticize it. But if I went down to the people who were just learning what they were learning, like just, yeah, like you said, just a couple steps ahead of me, it started to be digestible.
Mm-hmm.
And then exactly like you said, you can follow, okay, well, if I learn from someone who's just digesting it a little bit above me, and then I follow where they learned it, and then I follow where they learned it,
Yeah.
you can eventually handle the bigger stuff.
It makes those stepping stones more obvious, like those baby steps. It's
Yeah.
hard to know how to get from here to Tony Robbins.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a difference between following that trail than there is from just opening social media and going, who can I learn from today? So, like, if I follow Tara and learn everything I can from Tara, and then I learn everything I can from who inspires Tara, and follow that trail, it's really different than just opening Facebook and like searching hashtag personal development.
Right.
It's not the same. So
Motivation Monday.
yeah, yeah. So really, it's good stuff. And I've made once you start paying attention to it more, to like how your mind works more, I'll catch myself and be like, you're hopping because you're avoiding something.
Yes, exactly.
Probably a truth that guru, expert, mentor is trying to teach you, and you're freaking out because you don't want to learn it. So instead, you're hopping over to a different mentor because maybe they have a different approach, and really you're not getting anywhere except backtracking.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, when you pay more attention, you're like, oh, that's what I just did. Oops. But at the beginning, you think you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, which is like just keep learning, keep learning, keep learning. Take what you want, take what feels good, because that's what you have to do. At the beginning, you have to take what feels good, and then as you dig a little deeper, you're like, okay, the magic is when it doesn't feel good. And I space that and I dig into that and I understand that. But when you're first starting, like you don't want to follow a spiritual mentor who's like, are you ready to not feel good? Yeah. you have to work your way up.
Yep. And sometimes it gets a lot messier before it gets cleaner. So
yeah. I just got my email from coach training last night. So I start in like
soon. Oh my God.
I know. I'm like ridiculously excited. And I've been in self-coaching scholars for over a year, which makes you a diamond scholar.
Ooh.
And I got on coaching with Brooke for the first time last night.
Wait, you got to actually talk to Brooke like individually?
Yeah, which I have had the option to do for an entire year. I've just been too like, what happens to me is like, I'll go to ask her a question and then I just think to myself, what would Brooke say? And I coach myself through it. I'm like, well, you don't need to ask her because you know the answer. And so last night I was like, I'm going to ask her, even if I think I know the answer. And it wasn't like crazy, like exciting for me and scary in some ways because I've been following her for so long.
Yeah.
But she blew my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, I've been studying this for almost 2 years and like I was missing that detail. Like,
that's so exciting. I'm so happy for you.
Yeah, it makes coach training even more exciting. Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, well, I think that should probably wrap up this episode.
I think so too.
It ends on a very high note of you getting to speak to your chosen mentor personally, knowing that you're going to go be with her next week for this amazing program. I'm very happy for you. Okay, so on that note, do you have an ask that we can end the episode with?
An ask. Yeah, well, I guess my universal ask would just be like to keep having patience with myself. I have really high expectations of myself and other people. Sorry, all the other people. Really high expectations just in general in life. And when I use them to inspire me, it's awesome. But when I use them as like standards that I'm supposed to meet, it's super stressful. And I can do that. I do that with myself way more than I do it with anyone else. So patience as I learn is what I'll ask for from all the angels and energies and people who can help me maintain.
Okay. Okay, so my ask is for anyone who has not yet followed us on Instagram, please do, because we're still promoting our last couple weeks of early bird pricing for our summit. I'm super excited. You're going to miss out on opportunities of getting these early bird tickets, and you don't want to miss this event if you can by any chance make it to Western Mass for November 3rd. Really excited about it, so please connect in with us. I'm at My All in Life, and Amanda is at amandasarkingsley.com, right? I mean, at Amanda Sarkingsley.
Yep. And you can also just search Spirited Growth Summit. Google us up. You'll find us. It is on my website, but yeah, early bird pricing is like ridiculously inexpensive.
And going away.
Such a low investment, only available through the end of September, and the summit is going to be so good.
It's going to be so good. Okay. Till next time. Oh, yeah.